my dance, make it hurt.
So I got a little bit excited and started making headway on the motor before Dav actually turned up with the video camera. So got the block all cleaned up. First thing I did was measure the bores and get all my ring gaps set. So I used the piston ring grinder to get all the piston rings to where we want them to be, based on what we're aiming for. Then I've measured up the main journals, and then double checked the clearances, installed the crank. That's all in. Now where we are is we're on the first journal number 1 for the big end. Already used the micrometer to check the journals on the crank and just measured up the bearings on the rods themselves. Then I just double check everything with a plastic gauge anyway, just to make sure that we are where we want to be. Originally, the first measurement we took was with standard size ACL bearings. It was still within the spec of what Eagle recommend, but we was on the tighter end. So just to be on the safe side, and I'd rather work somewhere more in the middle, we went with a half standard shell and a half HX shell to give us the clearance that we need, and we'll just go through the other 3 the same. We'll just double check with the plastic gauge before we actually do the final torque, which won't be a torque, it'll be an actual stretch, but I always torque with and check the clearances, and then the final one will be with a stretch gauge, check the stretch on the bolts. After that, it'll just be boxing out the bottom end, flip it over. Head is already assembled. We already built the head up before, so it'll just be a case of putting that on. Done by CPL, so it's their own version of cylinder support system. Some of the slight differences are where they've got this groove cut out here where your head gasket sits. On a lot of them where they're just flat there, it doesn't allow any equalization for the coolant. This at least gives you a little equalization chamber, just so that across the whole thing your coolant is pretty much the same, rather than just relying on the little holes that you have here to make their way through the head gasket. At least there's coolant sat all the way across the top here, and it's the same pressure across. But all it is just a glorified block guard, so to speak, but just a way more better fit, precision, CNC machined, and then CNC billet, pressed in, always half mil oversized, because it's never going to be true round. One, because of mileage on the motor, and two, because once you actually fit this in, because it's an interference fit, it will ever so slightly put probably pressure on the bore, so you're going to go half mil over anyway. There we go, piston number 1 is in, looking pretty good. This is our top ring, which we already filed down on this side, just to get the clearance that we want. The clearance is not going to be the same for every motor. It's going to be dependent on what you're building it for, whether it's NA, turbo, and obviously your power goal. Second ring, file down to size. You don't ever want to file down the oil control rings, but you want to just put them in and just make sure that they are at least 15 thou clearance, and then you've got the little scraper. Right, before we go any further, just a quick tip. Obviously, if you're planning on building the motor yourself at home, if you want to have a go. So, exhaust side of the piston, always going to be smaller valve relief, because the valves are smaller than the intake side. When you assemble your rod, always make sure that the tangs are on the exhaust side. So we're pretty much finished putting the block together. The spec is quite basic really, but it's going to be effective for what we need. It's CP pistons, 9:8:1 compression, eagle rods, CSS cylinder support system, which we spoke about a little bit earlier. We've got the rear end seal on, we've got the oil pump on. Everything else underneath here has been talked up to spec. Literally the only thing we've got left to do at the bottom is just fit these nicely zinc coated windows tray on, pickup and a sump, and then that's pretty much the bottom end done. Ready for the head. As I mentioned earlier, the head's already been assembled. Supertech valves, springs, retainers, guides, ported 3-angle valve job. The only thing that we're not going to quite mention just yet is the cams that we're using, but as a start we're going to put some just stock B16 A2 cams in there just to do the initial running, wastegate tune. The plan is to try and possibly locate some ITR cams, because we want to do 3 comparisons of B16 A2 cams versus the ITR cams and then the big boy cams that are going in it once we're ready to send it. That's it, gearbox is done. Once we get it off here, the only thing we're going to do is fit the twin disc on, and we'll be ready for the car. And then obviously it's just going to be getting the car wired up and then getting this installed. We've got some fabrication work to do still, but slowly we'll get there. much finished putting the motor together. As we mentioned earlier on in the video, at the moment we've just got literally stock B16 cams in there. Initial running will be done on that. Wastegate, tune on the B16 cams, and then fingers crossed we can get a hold of some ITR cams. We'll throw them in there, and then the big boy cams. All the side covers are on, Golden Eagle cam gears, Supertech valves, springs, retainers, nitride exhaust valves, and Supertech inlet valves. And that's pretty much it. The head's been ported, polished, 16 new guides, and we are pretty much there. The only thing that we've got to fit on, which you see a picture of it complete, is this little unit there. That's it. The only thing left is now just drop the motor on the floor. We're probably going to wait and actually put the cam cover on once the motor is probably in the car. Twin disc, Clutch Master's twin disc to go on. Last little bits on this end, but then we'll bolt the gearbox on it and get it ready to drop in the bay. We've got some bits to do on the car before we go fitting this in, but we just want to get this all buttoned up, ready. That's it.